right.
look
Oh,
at that.
okay.
Wait, hang on.
Yes. Okay, so people were wondering, like, what happened to Ken? And, see, I gotta get this right. So, I don't know who sent me this, but, so these are actual magazine covers which have been slightly modified, because there are all these men's magazines and things. And I just love this, like, World Without Ken. They had forgotten what Ken looked like. And so I had to come back. But you can see what was going on. It's like me and Joan were fighting off these rabid lizards and
It's
things.
always lizards or something.
It's always
in a
or weasels. Weasels rip my flesh
rats.
and things like that.
Yeah.
And then there was Ken Steacy, the man who found cybernetic monsters and turned them into hood ornaments. That was a pet obsession of mine at one point, was car parts. So if anybody's missing a hood ornament, it wasn't me. I promise. So can we get a preview of the next slide just so I know what, or is it just going to go up?
I think it's just
No,
gonna
I can't go.
up.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, there we go. Okay.
what?
So the question was like, why am I here? When
Sorry, you brought memes?
Well, yes, because this is my absolute favorite. Because when the question is asked, like, why are you here? It's like, oh well, I ask myself this question all the time. There's something very zen about this. And the first time I saw this, I actually changed it a bit so it didn't have the rude word in there. But I wake up many mornings thinking very much like this. Why am I in the water and what the hell is that? I was going to try to describe this. I thought, no, there's no way I can say an orangutan in a life jacket, and there's a tapir, which, as we all know, is a sort of a pig-like creature with a prehensile nose.
Yes, we all know that.
Yeah, exactly. So I just thought, if you ever think you're having a bad day, just pull this meme up and you'll go, oh, okay, well, it could be worse. Like, there could be a tapir in the pool with me.
I can actually answer the first portion of that question for you.
Which was?
If you're waking up first thing in the morning and you're asking yourself, why am I in the water? The answer is your waterbed has sprung a leak.
Beach knows all
Did you ever
about
have a
that.
waterbed?
No.
Because he's not a murderer.
We did. We did.
I have experienced,
Long before Alex.
I've experienced a waterbed.
The waterbed had nothing to do
I've
with
never
Alex.
owned a waterbed.
Oh, sorry.
You are Alex's dad, all right.
Sure is.
Ken knows what a tapir is. Okay, that's it. That's the best one yet.
I always thought it was pronounced tapir, but I've only ever read it.
Who
I've never heard
knows?
it alive.
Who knows? Who knows? So what were we talking about? Waterbeds, yeah. Waterbeds are really creepy because you got to put bleach in them to keep all the life forms from propagating.
Sure, it makes sense.
And then when you decide to get rid of your waterbed, the only way you can do it is like put a hose in it and siphon the water out the window, which we did. And we got most of the water out, but then there was still some left, so we kind of dragged to the window and pushed it out. It was like a giant amoeba, like slithering out the window, and then it landed on the balcony on the second floor. And then we realized that there was this black car was sitting parked right beneath the balcony. And we had poured bleach all over the car.
Oh, no.
So we very quickly dragged the skeletal remains of the waterbed, this amoeba, away.
Yeah.
Don't tell anyone. This was like 40 years ago.
This is a great Shaggy Dog story.
Just before we go to the next slide, I want to answer a question I've seen pop up in chat a few times. We haven't forgotten about the art challenge. We're just having a lot going on here in the lunar module because dinner has arrived. Ken Steacy has arrived.
Dinner?
So a couple of folks are off stage getting food and judging that, and we will get back to you shortly. But we want to keep that spotlight right here.
Where it belongs. All right. Okay, so speaking of memes,
Oh boy.
so
Wow.
this started happening, and of course, I was actually delighted by the whole "okay, boomer" thing. So every single generation thinks
fun.
their parents are total squares, and that they're
Okay,
responsible
square.
for everything. Yeah, exactly. Okay, cube. We actually used to do that. We go, oh, what a square.
Yeah, I saw it in Pulp Fiction.
It was? I didn't
Yes.
know that. Well, anyway.
Yeah, they
Uma,
do.
Uma Thurman literally draws a white square in the air.
Okay.
It's weird.
Because I just wanted to take it back, and all I could think of was like, I'm a lumberjack and I'm okay.
Yeah.
I'm a boomer and I'm okay. Should we sing that song?
Nope.
No.
We're a little tight on time.
Oh, all
Yeah.
right. Okay. All right. So we're gonna change focus a little and get a little serious for a change.
For sure.
So today is Remembrance Day,
Yep.
and it's always a tough day because I come from a military family. My grandfather. This is a picture of my grandfather, the Reverend Colonel R.H. Steacy, who was the senior chaplain of the Canadian Expeditionary Forces in World War I. My dad was an officer in and a jet fighter pilot in the Royal Canadian Air Force. And of course, so a deep and abiding respect for the military has always been part of our lives. In some ways, I suppose it saddens me that we need a day to remind people of the sacrifices that were made by mostly young people so that we could be here and doing what we're doing. But I suppose, better light a single candle than to curse the darkness. So I just want to talk a little bit about that and about my history and Alex's as well. So again, this is my grandfather, Alex's great-grandfather. Next. This is his field communion set, which was donated to. He was graduated from Trinity College in the University of Toronto, and all his artifacts and correspondence were donated to their archives. And I went to see them a couple of years ago, and it was quite remarkable because in the Fawns they had all this correspondence between my grandfather and my mother. And they married fairly late. I think they were, in their late 30s, early 40s. But the correspondence was just so delightful and heartwarming. It was like two, young lovers just, opening their hearts to one another. It was beautiful. But this is what got me, was this field communion kit, because from what I understand, my grandfather, he was more over there to boost morale and to go to garden parties and things in London, but he spent most of his time in the field in France and ministering to soldiers. And I imagined how many young men, and it was for the most part men at that point in combat, took their last communion from this very chalice. And I did, at one point I put it to my lips, and it was a very deeply moving and powerful moment to imagine that connection with all those who had gone before. Next. So this is an Ottawa newspaper from November 10th, 1942. The gentleman on the upper row, second from the left, is my father and Alex's grandfather.
I can totally see it.
And
just the lines of his face, I remember.
So he's 17 years old there, and he is about to join up to fight the good fight for king and country. And I've often wondered about these other guys and like what happened to them. Did they join? Did they serve? Did they survive? Did they come back? Happily, Dad did survive. Next. This is his proudest moment of having his wings pinned on him by his older brother, who is also in the RCF. That's my Uncle Dick. And our Uncle John, who I don't have a picture of, served in the army all the way from 38 to 45. He came all the way up from Africa through Italy and up all the way into Holland. Next. And these are, on my mom's side, these are my two uncles, Clifford and Hubert, or rather Hubert and Clifford. They were both tail gunners in Wellingtons, which was a medium twin-engine bomber. Clifford, he was involved in the first 1,000-plane raid in 1941. His aircraft crashed with the loss of the entire crew. Next. And there they are, about to go off on, I imagine, this ill-fated mission. His brother survived the war, but they were attacked. They were bounced by night fighters somewhere over Fortress Europe. They were very badly shot up. He was hit in every part of his body but his head, and they didn't think he'd survive. He actually had the most units of blood transfused to any Commonwealth personnel and survived. And he ended up becoming an air traffic controller in Vancouver, and sadly died of lung cancer because he was a very heavy smoker. So the Nazis couldn't kill him, but J.R. Reynolds did. So a little bit of irony there. Next. So here's Dad post-war. He decided after he got out of the service in 45, got back in 48, decided all he wanted to do was punch holes in the clouds. So here he is with a Mustang, which was his absolute favorite aircraft. Next. And then he transitioned to jet aircraft, Sabres, which was the most dangerous occupation in the world. Nobody knew a thing about them, and so all young pilots were essentially test pilots. Though they weren't paid as test pilots, They just did it because that was their job. They
You
were
get
serving.
extra pay for being a test pilot?
You would if you were a civilian. You got paid a lot of money. But these guys were just like, hey, it's a job.
Huh.
Next. And that's my favorite hero shot of Dad. That's under the tail of Voodoo, which is a large interceptor that he flew during the Cold War. Next. So this is him on the cover of the Star Weekly magazine in June of 1962 when he took delivery of our first Voodoos. Their mission, and I'm astonished to hear myself say this because it just seems so unreal. Those aircraft were armed with 2 nuclear-tipped missiles, and the doctrine was that the Soviets were going to attack us by coming over the North Pole in waves of bombers, and Dad and his comrades would fly up and swat them out of the sky with nuclear weapons.
I saw it was either a model or like a decommissioned one of those in the Atomic Testing Museum in Nevada. Which is a weird little tie-in with all this.
Yeah. So it's funny because, I grew up believing that doctrine. I believed that we were kept safe and out of harm's way because Dad and those guys were there to protect us. So years later when I went to art college and I would tell people these stories, they would look at me like I was nuts. Like, your gut, he was what? So it's a very, very strange world that I grew up in. And I've reflected on that a great deal. Next. So this is Dad. During the Cold War, during the Cuban Missile Crisis in October of '63, when the world came that close to nuclear holocaust, Dad was on alert. This is in Ottawa, and he was on alert, and which meant he had to pretty much sleep beside one of those aircraft, ready to go. And when if the balloon ever went up, and again we were very, very close to that happening, he would take off. So we had no idea if he was going to come home at night. But what he did. During that time, he had bought this model kit, which is the visible V8 engine, and he brought it home and he built it for us on the kitchen table. And as the name implies, it's a plastic model, a 1/4 scale model of a V8 engine. And when you put in the batteries and turn it on, you can see the pistons going up and down, the crankshaft turning, and there's little tiny grain of wheat light bulbs that go off and on in sequence. There's actually a distributor, and
It's really cool.
It's incredible. It's incredible. And he built this for us. When, on the hours he got off, he would come home and he worked on this thing and built it for us. And I just remember the absolute joy when he turned the switch on the first time, and all of us were just amazed by this thing. So years later, I found the kit and I built it for Dad. And I have, my modeling skills are pretty good. It's a bear to put together. It's very difficult. But he built it, and he did that for us kids while we waited for Armageddon. And it just bespeaks the kind of person that he was, the kind of love and concern that he had for his family, that he would do that. So it was a great gift for me to be able to pass it back to him. Next. So this is Dad passed in 2007, and his mental and physical health had been declining for almost 10 years. Before that, we watched him slip away, and writing his eulogy was probably the hardest thing I've ever done because you're doing it through a veil of tears. But the thing was I reread all our correspondence and just looked at all the pictures, and it was like bringing him back to life. And so I created this, which is a shadow cabinet that I gave to my stepmom that I just got back, which has the Mustang, which is his favorite plane, his tie with the RCF tartan, his medals, his dog tags, and little pins of... my favorite one, right above the poppy, you can't quite make it out, but that's actually a caterpillar. He was a member of the Caterpillar Club, which is a very exclusive club of people who have survived bailing out of an aircraft. So that saber that you saw, I was about 2 years old at the time, and they had lost the pilot under circumstances that they weren't clear what it was. So he, there it is right there. So he, I believe he was a squadron leader at the time, so he took one of these sabers up and he got it into this flat spin and tightened it up and got out of it, tightened it up, got out of it. And then finally got into a spin that was so tight that he couldn't get out of it. And so, and he described it, and if anybody knows pilots, they're a really sanguine bunch. Like and they're very, they've got, stainless steel veins with ice water running through them. So, and he's got a great sense of humor, my dad. And he said, okay, so I knew, let's see, you try A, you try B, you try C. There's an old saying in the Air Force, like the third red light kills you. Like something goes wrong, you can deal with it. The second thing goes wrong, okay, got it. And then something else goes wrong, that's what does you in. So he thought, okay, what am I going to do? So those aircraft had fuel tanks underneath the wings. So he said, okay, get rid of the fuel tanks. So he thought, I better duck my head down just in case they come rolling over the wings and hit me in the head. So he punches them off, and he kind of peers up over the sill, and there's these huge fuel tanks are now formating on his wings as he's spinning around and round and round. Now, fortunately, they finally go away. So he figures, okay, time to go, because the Earth is zooming up at me. He, pulls the handles, and what's supposed to happen is the canopy is supposed to pop off, and then the ejection seat fires out and deploys your chute.
And then you get shorter.
Yes, it's true, because your spine compresses. Fortunately for Dad, or unfortunately rather, the canopy did not deploy, so he had to fire straight through the canopy, which knocked him out. It hit him in the head, knocked him out, and happily, about a few months before, they had just installed automatic feature on these ejection seats, which would deploy your chute for you. Because if he had been knocked out and they didn't have this seat, we would not be having this conversation. Right. So thank you, Martin Baker, for making such a wonderful product.
Thanks, Martin.
Thank you, Martin Baker. They're the guys who make the ejection seat. So anyway, so he comes to and looks up, and here's this beautiful big parachute, and he thinks, okay, so I'm coming down to the ground pretty fast, and it's all forest, and he figures, getting hung up a tree is going to suck, so I'll just kind of like do the thing they teach you about you pull in the risers and you move this. Pulls in the risers, the front of the canopy folds under, and he figures, that's it. Well, the good Lord has got me this far. I am not going to mess with fate anymore. So he fortunately lands in a little clearing and realizes, okay, I wonder if anybody knows where I am, because I'm going to freeze to death out here, because it was in the middle of winter. Right. And unbeknownst to him, back at the base, nobody did know he was gone until a lady, a farmer, called the base and said, hello, I just saw one of your planes crash. And they went, oh, that's not possible because they're all back. Oh, okay, well, have a nice day. And then finally somebody went down the flight line and went, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Uh-oh. And the best part is that one of his pals that he had served with, it was his job to go and tell my mom that Dad was missing. And I love the way she tells it, because I think the toughest people in the world are, at the time, of course, the wives of pilots. So this guy comes out the door and rings the doorbell, and Mom says, "Hey, what's up?" His name was Duke Warren, and he says, "Hi, Peggy. How do you like my new gray coat?" And she just said, cut to the chase. What's up with Charles? Oh, okay. Do you still like my gray coat? Now, the good news is they found him. They could not get a helicopter in because he was in so much brush, and they had to hack a trail to him, and they got him out. So the long and the short of it was they figured out what, that this was something that pilots should not do because they was never going to get out of it. His helmet was on display. It's like, why you wear your helmet, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Okay, so, sorry, I got off on a bit of a tangent there.
Did you?
Next. Yes, next. So when Dad passed, I wanted to have something to do with his monument, so I designed that. I wanted to do something very simple and respectful and elegant. And those are poppies that Alex and Raymond and I left one year. Next. And then there's also these ad astra stones. The motto of the Royal Canadian Air Force is per ardua ad astra, which is through adversity to the stars, which is a lovely sentiment that I think we can all, inspire us. So this is the National Air Force Museum of Canada, the RCAF Museum, and these stones are all around, and anyone can purchase one and have it placed for any member who served in the RCAF or the course. Next. I'm sorry.
I was just going to say I've been there several times, so I would have been right there near there and not known that connection.
Thank you. Yeah. So we get there was a bit of a flap today or yesterday, I guess, because notorious loudmouth Don Cherry was shooting his mouth off about, like, if you don't wear a poppy, you're not a good Canadian or something. And it was really like, give me a break. I don't think anyone should tell anyone else how to observe or respect or remember, those who have served. I wear a poppy every day. It's right here in my heart. This is my desk, and as you can see, there's 2 pictures of my dad, the one from the Star Weekly and the one of him under the tail of the 101. He watches over me. He inspires me. He was a man who followed his bliss and who encouraged others, myself included. I followed a very atypical career path for someone who's a military brat.
Yeah, you hippie.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Your hair is almost as long as mine was.
Oh no, it's happening again.
I'm becoming my father. Oh no.
As someone who comes from an RCMP family, that's relatable.
Must work for Marvel.
No, don't do it. Don't sell your soul. Or if you do, sell it for a fortune. By the way, that's the National Nuclear Safety poster that Dad brought home for me one time that concentrate on the job.
I've been trying to find that for ages. I have a
You
photo
never
so
will.
I can recreate it.
I will leave it to you. But you won't get it for a long time.
Good.
Okay,
I don't want it for a long time.
So I want to talk about my mom because, like I say, Mom had so much courage and gumption, and boy, what she put up with. She lived in a trailer at the end of a runway while Dad was off going to air combat whatever in North Africa when she was living in Germany, which is where I was born. She was, freezing with 2 kids now, and she was amazing. This is my favorite picture of me and my mom.
Oh, I see what you did there.
What's that, Alex?
You're being smart again.
Yes. You can't see me because I won't be born
You're
for about another
expectant.
10 days. That typewriter she gave me when I went off to college, and I used it for about 20 years, and I still have it. And that picture sits there on that typewriter, and I think about her all the time as well. We lost her in '95, and we were kind of like oil and water as we got older. But I prefer to, I think, very fondly and with great love and affection of my mom as the best mother a boy could possibly have. And I think that's something that we do, is especially as we get older, we determine what is worth hanging on to and celebrating, and what is worth just letting go and dissipating. Next. So, like I say, they were enormously, supportive. This is me with my Incredible Hulk T-shirt, my comic book collection. Like I say, they never dissuaded me from, because when I was 11, I decided I was going to do this for a living.
Right.
And they never said, that's a dumb idea. I mean, once or twice they said, honey, what about architecture? They draw the... No! I'm going to draw comics like Jack Kirby.
I know this is obvious, but you're such a dork.
I know. To this day, I was going to say I have better hair. No, I don't. I have less hair. But I don't know why I had that dorky haircut. I wanted a brush cut. I wanted to look like Peter Parker. I thought I was Peter Parker when I was a kid.
Of course you did.
Yeah, anyway.
Why wouldn't you want to be Peter Parker?
So, by the way, that, which I bought in 1966, now belongs to Gareth Godin, who runs Legends Comic Shop. Big shout out to Gareth. I think it was a wedding present I gave him. So it's the same one. Next. This is how dorky I was. I built all of the Marvel characters that I loved out of Lego. And this is tough because this was back when they only had like 4 colors.
Yeah.
None of this, jazz I got nowadays with the little,
Yeah, you
things.
couldn't go to the store and buy the set of here
I
are all the
say-
Marvel minifigs. You were like,
This
you were
is
following
testament to the strength
script.
of
You
the
were like,
design.
I'm gonna
Yeah.
build this.
Okay, well, I got to tell you about Alex.
What? Oh, God.
Alex and Raymond, we would buy them Lego because it's the greatest toy ever invented, right? Raymond would always build stuff, so he would look at the box and go, right, and he would build exactly to plan, which is kind of the way you have to build models. So, I really admired and respect that, because if you build a model wrong, then, you'd end up with stuff like, a part that, like a seat that doesn't go into, Sorry. Alex, however, would just dump the stuff on the floor and go, wah! And he would build something amazing. So, anyway, I'm particularly proud of the Invisible Girl, now Invisible Woman.
Yeah, that's pretty sweet.
Because they had I think they just introduced the Claire pieces. So, yeah.
Is that Daredevil there?
Yes.
Oh,
Nice.
So
Daredevil.
Spider-Man, Daredevil. Yeah, go
Yeah.
ahead.
Yep, and Spider-Man, and then the Fantastic Four.
Yeah, and Iron Man right beside Daredevil. Did you say Iron Man?
Yeah.
Okay.
Wide.
So
Daredevil was the one that I was wondering.
Yeah,
I was trying to figure it out. I'd gotten everyone else, and I was like,
cool. Okay, next. 66. So this is the Avro Arrow, which is, of course, this spectacular aircraft which is designed and built in Canada. Dad would have flown those, but they were canceled because it was believed that the Era of the Man Interceptor was over. And I comforted myself by knowing that in some ways, with the savings from not building the spectacular aircraft, we all got socialized medicine. So, you know, like, thank you, John Diefenbaker, you jerk.
It's not like I like you or anything.
No. Ken, I love my husky
Careful, I'm
boy.
from Saskatoon.
Anyway, next. By the way, you can visit that before you go on. You can visit that. That is the last remaining piece of an arrow. They hack them up with blow torches, and you actually see the marks where they cut them up, and that's all that remains. There's a couple wing panels as well, but there is a full-scale model. Anyway, so I got to. I am actually an official war artist. In 1984, I got the assignment to depict the peacetime activities of navigators in the Canadian Armed Forces in the Air Arm, and I got to go for a ride in the back seat of those very Voodoos that Dad had flown back in the day. This is me trying to look all right stuffy, and I'm actually terrified here. I'll tell you another quick story about that. We only have 4 minutes, so I'm going to wrap this up. So you have to do what's called high altitude indoctrination, which means they put you in a hyperbaric chamber and they bounce up to 30,000 feet and they do explosive decompression and all this stuff. And you get to experience hypoxia, which is great fun.
is that what we're calling that? It's fun?
Yeah.
It's
Okay.
like being drunk, isn't it?
It is, because what happens is they turn off your oxygen at 30,000 feet, and very rapidly you discover like what your symptoms of hypoxia are, so that you recognize them if something ever goes wrong. It's really cool because they give you a little chart and you have to draw these figures, and you keep drawing them, and you can actually watch your mental capacities deteriorate, like in less than 5 minutes it goes. And being an artist, I thought, I'm going to show them. I'm going to do really perfect maple leaves. I'm going to draw these here. It's weird too because some people get really surly. This one guy said, "This is BS," and he dropped the clipboard and got up and tried to get out of the hyperbaric chamber before they sat him down and turned his air back on. So that was kind of fun. So anyway, so then 3 minutes. So then, as I'm going out to the plane to go for my my ride, in which I actually did break the sound barrier, which was very exciting. They said, "Did you get you did HAI, which is high altitude indoctrination? Did you get ground egress training?" I said, "What?" I said, "Oh no, come with me." So on the way back, they said, "Yeah, you gotta know how to get out of the plane in case it crashes on takeoff." And he said, "Yeah, just a few months ago, like Navy pilot in Patuxent there, somewhere like that. Yeah, you ran off the end of the runway, aircraft in flames, undoes all his belts and buckles and things, jumps over the side, and he'd forgotten to undo his Marine lanyard, and he hung there and he was incinerated." And I know they were just like trolling me, but I was like, how about we just don't attach my Marine lanyard? How about that? So anyway, so we did that, got back in, took off. It was amazing because these aircraft have what are called afterburners, which is basically they give full power and then they squirt like raw fuel into the jet of flux, which explodes and gives you this unbelievable acceleration. So we did what's called an Immelman, which is where you take off like this and you go up and then you're on your back and then you're actually looking up at the ground and then it snaps over like that.
Okay.
And it was fabulous. And I did the stupidest thing. I said to the pilot, I said, I'm so impressed right now. You don't have to do anything to impress me, which is like red meat to a pilot. So of course he wanted to show me that kind of stuff.
Don't.
So yeah. So breaking the sound barrier was kind of anticlimactic because we're in northern BC and we're up at about 40,000 feet or something like that. And they put it into a shallow dive, and they plug in the burners again, and you just watch the Mach meter kind of go 9.6, 9.7, 9.8, and then the whole plane just kind of shivered, and then it stopped. It was like I was suspended in midair, and nothing was moving. All I could hear was just the thrumming of the engine coming through, your body. And I thought, wow, this is really cool. And he said, okay, well, we can't do this for long because the taxpayers are paying for this joyride of yours. Thank you, taxpayers. So we're going to go subsonic now. So not only did he yank the throttle back, he popped the speed brakes as well. So he went from like just over 700 miles an hour to down to about 5 or 6 or something. And so I was just hanging the straps going like this. So you really notice like going subsonic again. The transonic thing is like no big deal. And then on the way back down, of course, we saw the ferry coming over from Powell River. This is up in Comox. And of
I
course,
grew up in Powell River.
was that you? No, wait, no, you weren't even.
It could have been.
And he decided he had to beat out the Powell River ferry. So we go, and we're zooming by.
It's not hard to beat the Powell River Ferry, I can tell you that right now.
In a plane?
Yeah, I suppose. Anyway, so got back. All right, next. So this is what I produced. This is a series of I did a series of 8 paintings. I was responsible for doing 6, of which they choose 4. I did 8. They liked them so much that they bought the rest. These are now on in the collection of the National War Museum in Ottawa, which I absolutely recommend. Anyone who's in Ottawa, go and see it. It is one of a world-class museum. It's absolutely incredible.
It's amazing.
Thank you. So yeah, so it was a really wonderful chance to honor my dad and all those who had flown and fought during the Cold War. Next. Okay, I'm going to save this for after like the shift change, okay? Because there's about another dozen slides or so.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
So,
Do you
is
wanna,
that cool?
Yeah, I'm totally good with that.